Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. I did see War World prior to this. I thought it was okay. Not great, but pretty decent. So that's why I decided I would do a first time watching with this because I did read this comic as a kid. And I was very intrigued by DC Comics as a kid because they had the best characters as far as comic books goes with Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, The Flash. They were more epic, grander scale characters in Marvel. And they dealt with space more often. And there was a lot more comics where you would just see their superhero counterparts and not their human counterparts. And for me, that will always interest me. Like I love Superman, but I hated Clark Kent. And the same thing with Batman and Bruce Wayne. So I was always drawn to DC Comics for that. And this was a very epic scale comic. So anything with space and bunch of superheroes and also the great artwork. I think George Perez did this. Always attracted me. Even though mainly I read Marvel, when I did read DC, it was comics like this. So it'll be interesting to see this take. I know that CW did a version of this, but I mean that's not in my age range for me to watch CW stuff. So I don't know if that was any good or not, but I'm still into these animated DC movies. They're definitely better than the live action DC stuff, at least in my opinion. So here we have Flash, I guess. Flash was a big central character in the comic.
While ago, and I wasn't about to forget that culinary curiosity.
Iris, his future wife, did a race bend on this character. I'm not sure if they race bended her on the CW stuff or anywhere else.
Is this okay? I don't want to get you fired.
Again, this alter ego stuff doesn't really interest me, but
I've just been picking
I
up
guess they're just
pieces
establishing the
along the way.
characters here.
Where are you going? Get home.
I wonder if that's supposed to be
Get home.
Pariah.
You need to get up. Get up.
So it looks like
I'm the Flash.
Flash is time jumping.
Sit this one out. I can handle this.
This looks like the version of Superman from Warworld,
Whatever he
a
is.
younger version.
Android. No, no, don't.
Based on the way Flash is reacting, he's bouncing around in his timeline. Amazo is not a character I remember from the comics. I don't think I read any comics maybe that he was in, but I am aware of him from the animated shows and movies. His character is really inconsistent because sometimes Batman can take him down, and sometimes heavy hitters like Superman can't. But he basically drains and emulates meta-human powers. Real smart. He's got Superman powers, and you can take him out with a crowbar. Green Arrow here. Even though I don't watch the CW, I do know Green Arrow and the Flash are like the primary characters in that whole world. It just seems kind of silly that he has Superman's speed, Amazo, but that he let them drive away in a car. It could be that his goal wasn't to kill them, though. Obviously, here visiting Batman. Yeah, based on the drawing, this is Warworld Batman as well. So Warworld, if you haven't seen it, centered around Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. And they were in displaced timelines and weren't sure why they were there. It turns out they were in Warworld for, I guess, an extended period of time. And I think Martian Manhunter was a big part of that too, and Lobo. Those were the main heroes in that one. Again, it was okay, nothing great, but intrigued me enough to watch this and decide to do a first time watching video. Again, he's bouncing around. It seems like she's aware of a lot of things that she wasn't the first time we saw them. So bouncing around between a couple timelines, it looks like. Again, this appears to be Pariah or a different version of Pariah. And from what I remember, I mean, this has been a lifetime ago since I read these books. But Pariah was a scientist who was researching something, and he ended up discovering other timelines, and that the anti-monitor became aware of it, and that's how he started destroying other timelines to get more powerful. And the monitor was the one that kept Pariah alive, but Pariah was then present as worlds were being destroyed. So it appears that that's that character. Again, this is for my memory's kind of hazy, but that's the essential essence of what I think the character was. And it appears that like Flash we may be seeing like Flash be a hybrid. Maybe this version of Pariah and Flash are a hybrid of what Pariah was. Because it seems like Flash may be our main character in this, and he may be our main point of view character. So his role may be expanded from the original version. And this is the Barry Allen version of Flash. And obviously this version of Batman hasn't turned Dick Grayson into Robin. More time jumping. This is one reason why I stopped collecting comics. And before I stopped collecting, I stopped with DC before I stopped with Marvel. Because there's a lot of inconsistencies with these characters. I mean, shouldn't sunlight be the thing that's gonna repower Superman? And where does Batman get all this technology from? People mock the 60s version of Batman, especially that famous scene where he's like shark repellent. He has shark repellent on his belt and he sprays it on a shark and it falls off his leg. And that was a huge source of comedy. And that was like just one example of like how silly the character was, that he just so happened to have the solution for every problem on his utility belt. A Deus Ex Machina would just come out on his utility belt in every episode. But as serious as the comic book and animated versions of Batman's become, he's essentially more than ever like that 60s version, where he just has a solution for everything on his utility belt or in his bat cave, and he just knows everything, which is kind of annoying because he's so overpowered, even though he has no powers. The thing that I liked about the comics for this is that Batman was kind of on the sidelines. It was more about the cosmic characters, the actual overpowered characters that were on the battlefield, because so much of it was in space and so much of it depended on the actual superpowered beings rather than the more contemporary version of Batman that can solve everything. Because again, why wouldn't Superman know the sunlight would help him more than coffee, as opposed to Batman knowing? It just makes other characters look stupid to make Batman look better. That's a big part to ignore. He literally just said he was on another Earth, and they're like, "Oh well, let's focus on the part about forming a team as opposed to the part where you've been on parallel or Earths." It's not like Green Arrow is a cosmic character that would know about parallel Earths either. He's just an archer. Here we have the Seven Samurai, Ocean's 11, I guess, montage now, where they're going to form a team. I wonder if they're going to have that X-Men's Origins Magneto scene where they're forming the team and then Wolverine tells them to fuck off and he just leaves. I wonder if we'll have a character do something like that. Martian Manhunter? Or John Stewart? Martian Manhunter. If they do have someone tell them to F off, I think it should be Lobo. Because he is like the DC version of Wolverine. I see they're not going with the John Stewart version of Green Lantern in this. Oh. It looks like I was right and wrong at the same time. Someone did tell them to F off, but it wasn't the character I thought it would be. So this is definitely Pariah, but he's not acting or looks like the comic book version of Pariah. So I think he may be an avatar for Pariah. I think it's a different character that's serving that function. And I guess he's the one that's initiating Barry going to different timelines. This is obviously a timeline that's unaware of the Flash, or the Flash is like a bad guy in this timeline. There either might be no superheroes in this timeline, or this might be the a timeline where like heroes are villains. Yeah, this is a crime syndicate timeline. The thing I never got with the animated version of the syndicate is, what the hell do they need with all this money? I mean, they're essentially gods, the Justice League. So an evil version of the Justice League could do whatever they want. So I don't know what money from robbing a bank is going to do for them. Are they actually going to pay for anything, or can they just take what they want? Here we have a road call. Everyone gets a turn to rough Flash up. That's actually hilarious. So I guess Pariah doesn't need to touch Barry or be around Barry to make him time jump, unless he was in that room and we just didn't see him. Superhero teams are so weird. I mean, you have someone like Superman and the Flash, and who are essentially gods. They're so overpowered physically. And then Batman, who's so overpowered mentally. And you have like someone like Green Arrow, just a guy shooting arrows on the team. And Vixen, even though she has powers, it's like so much lower level than Superman. Seeing the Flash do stuff like this is always cool. Or just seeing super speed is always cool. Because Quicksilver in the X-Men movies, watching him use his powers was always cool too. Always love stuff like this too, not just the Flash moving fast while he's moving so fast that everything looks like they're standing still, but also the Flash talking to other superpowered beings in regular time, but technically it's supposed to be super fast time. He's done that with Superman before, and it's always cool when you see that. The Flash is just a cool character, honestly. He's not a bad entry character for this story. I mean, I prefer Batman and Superman, but at least the Flash is cool, super powered, but he has some level of vulnerability that those characters don't have. Personality-wise, he doesn't have to know everything before it happens, like Batman, which is annoying. And then physically, I mean, obviously his super speed makes him OP, overpowered, but I mean, it's not to the level of like a Superman, which has super speed and all the other powers too. They've done this in other storylines as well. Is have the Flash be kind of like the heart or the conscience of the Justice League. I forgot if it was a movie or in the TV show where there was an alternate universe where the Flash was killed or didn't exist or something, and then the Justice League went evil, and it was because they didn't have a Flash to balance out the personalities and keep them in line with with him being like the conscience of the team. I like the bouncing around that the Flash is doing because it keeps the stories going. It seems that it keeps it going at a rapid pace, and it helps to cut out the fat. Instead of just seeing this story play out linearly, yeah, there we go. Instead of having this story play out linearly, because you're jumping back and forth, there are more time gaps you can jump, and you could just fill in the rest for yourself. So it's a quicker pace, and you just get the highlights of both timelines or all of the timelines. Man, these guys are such a-holes. That's funny. This is a decent incarnation of the crime syndicate, but they've been better versions where I think their personalities were a little bit more varied. The only negative about this version, it seems like they're too in sync personality wise. It's just like, we're evil, ha 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 ha, as opposed to a little bit of nuance between the characters. Okay, it's John Constantine. So Pariah is John Constantine in this version of Crisis. Yeah, he's 100% Pariah. So I guess this is the extent of the timelines at this point, it seems like.
Wally, slow down. That's gotta last the whole reception.
Wally West.
It's my wedding.
So
You're my best man.
John Stewart. So we have the wedding timeline.
Oh, Lois.
We have the crime syndicate timeline,
Yours is maid of honor.
and we have the Amazo
I see Jensen
timeline.
here on time. There's another bet I lost.
Look, I gotta see Iris.
Barry, it's bad luck.
Luck.
So it feels like those are the main three timelines we're following.
Iris?
I don't think there was another timeline. I think it's just these three.
Why start now?
Nice.
Pun intended.
Back and forth between moments in my area. Something major.
Yeah, you're getting married. It's weird. Sometimes like you'll see this transition and he's running, and sometimes you'll see the transition and he's not running. But what is actually happening while these transitions happen? So like when he leaves mentally that room with his wife, what's happening to the version of him that stays in that timeline?
You found me.
Is he just catatonic? Does he forget about the conversation?
You're Anthony Ivo.
That's the only thing that I'm not fully calculating in my mind right now,
Control of my android.
because it seems like it's linear.
He is a threat to you.
As he jumps from one timeline to another, it seems like it's a linear stream of consciousness. It's like, oh, this happened. Now this is going to happen. Now that's going to happen, from timeline to timeline to timeline to timeline. But if it's a linear thought process,
You must be a doctor.
what's happening to the timeline where he doesn't jump?
In your
Where it's like, all right, he's leaving the room with his wife. His thoughts continue here.
I've been working on quantum
I don't know.
energy absorption technology.
Maybe it feels linear and
When I
that conversation continues.
this hyper-aging disease killing me.
And maybe I'm just overthinking it.
Lex encouraged
But I like stories like this that make you think. You know, it's not
my life.
super simple. Like there's some like, oh, there's some, I don't know. DC animated universe it started off great. Then it had this lull in between where some really bad storylines where it was just like another story of just Batman not wanting to have partners and Batman learning to have partners. And it's just like, oh, how many times do we have to see Batman go through that same arc over and over and over again? Either with him and Robin, him and Nightwing, him and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the same arc over and over and over again. Then you get something like this, which is super intricate and complicated, that's pulled off well. So this is DC animation at its best. Like this is one of the upper ones. Like I'm only a third of the way through this, but this is definitely a lot better than War World. This is one of the better ones. Not the best, because there've been some really great ones, but so far this is back to form for one of the better ones. I like it. And it seems so far at least like a good interpretation of the story. Because it's The only problem I had with the original comic, it might have been because I was so young when I was reading it, is that it was kind of hard to follow. And I think by grounding everything through Flash, even though it's still a little confusing to me, it's still not too hard to follow. Like maybe the logic of it is kind of confusing to me, but it's pretty easy to follow the story, and it's a pretty good story so far. Oh wow. So I guess they're not too bad. They're saving these people. So they are trying to do the right thing in the face of their world dying. Wait, he didn't save them? Oh, that's hilarious. Also, are they just trying to save their statues? That's wild. Yo, that's wild. Oh, that's crazy. Oh wow, that was really good. That was well done. They had me there for a second.
What am I doing? I gotta get out there and help. This world.
That's wild.
You're Sadie's sister, aren't you? I saw you.
They didn't give a damn about those people. They just didn't want them to die on their property. That's hilarious. Mm. So I wonder if the Flash changing timelines is part of his guilt then. Because what else would the Flash do wrong? It must have been somehow the Flash with Flashpoint, or I think in the end of like one of the Teen Titans movies, he altered timeline. So I think he altered the timeline twice. I'm not sure about the continuity of these movies, but I would think maybe Flash altering timelines is part of what is leading to this. Again, that wasn't part of the original story, but I mean, obviously you're going to make changes. So I guess they're splitting up
Superpowered friends are just about dead. We can't keep this up much
the
longer.
Harbinger
My contingency plan is ready. Okay,
character.
the DEFCON one.
I'm sorry, the Pariah character. They're dividing up the Pariah character with John Constantine and the Flash, which works. Because I always thought it was weird to just introduce a completely new character just for that. When you have so many characters at your disposal, it's like, why not use a character we're already familiar with to tell the story instead of just inventing a new character to tell the story? I mean, it made sense in the comic book, but I could see why it would make sense here in this animated version to just have a point of view character that we're already invested in and familiar with, like the Flash and then to an extent John Constantine, to do the function of the pariah role. So obviously here Lex Luthor is the one manipulating Amazo. So this feels like Amazo's kind of like an anti-hero maybe, but this kind of feels like Amazo's going to turn good because they're really emphasizing that he's being manipulated here. So I guess it made sense in hindsight to have Green Arrow on the team, since Amazo is draining the powers of the superpowered beings. I guess it made sense to not have Batman be the only human member of the Justice League. By having two human members, you have multiple characters that can still fight Amazo and Lex Luthor while you have the depowered metahumans losing the fight. So I like the way that everything kind of fits together and makes sense. Not a lot's being done by accident. It's pretty efficient, which is what you need for such a big, massive, complex story to tell like this. Even though you have 3 movies, there's a lot to condense. So you have to be, the more you condense and the more characters you have to follow, the more efficient you have to be with your storytelling. So he's either gonna die or become like a super hero or super villain. Oh wow. Is he gonna come back alive? Oh, he's dead. He killed him.
That is an
Oh
unacceptable
wow.
outcome.
He sacrificed himself
Everything functioned within expected parameters.
just to put Amazo on the right track.
Of course, would contract that syndrome.
Oh wow.
The likelihood is far greater that you infected Professor
That's crazy.
to motivate
Lex Luthor's. Yo. Oh wow. So Lex gave him the disease so he would create Amazo. That's crazy. Lex Luthor is essentially the bad guy version of Batman. He's superhuman smart, which just makes him overpowered in a way too. This whole no-kill thing is always kind of stupid in comics because people justify killing so much in real life. You know, stand your ground, or, you know, let's go to war, or let's kill all those terrorists, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Capital punishment. But yet in comic books, like no one ever dies. You can have these international criminals, these genocidal criminals. It's like, no, we're better than them. Don't kill any of them. The amount of damage that Lex caused and everything his actions led to. The idea is like, no, don't kill him. We're better than that. It's just so stupid to me. I mean, I get it in the sense that these are made for kids. And when I read this comic, God, I couldn't have been older than like, I don't know, but I mean, I didn't read it when it first came out, but still, I was super young, you know? So I get how killing is not a message you want to send, but it's just so silly. I just said that. Batman just acknowledged him and Luthor are basically the same. It's just one is a good guy, one is a bad guy. So it seems like this timeline is kind of wrapping up. So it feels like we're probably going to focus on the other two timelines now. Oh, he's old. So this is a time jump in the wedding timeline, I guess, because you hear Iris's voice talking to him. Obviously, this isn't the time syndicate timeline. Hmm. So he's time jumping within his timeline. So I guess this answers my question about what happened at the start of this conversation when he went to the time syndicate timeline.
You can't promise that, Barry.
I guess the conversation just kept playing out, even though we saw the time syndicate timeline in the middle of that conversation.
Yeah, I figured.
Harbinger?
Barry Allen of Earth 1, you are needed.
Okay, finally we get the Infinite Crisis stuff going.
It's okay, everybody. She's with me. This is.
I am Harbinger.
Yeah,
The world is in
Harbinger.
terrible danger.
Looks very different. Why can't real women be that cool? Instead of like causing a fuss, she's just like, okay, cool, let's be pragmatic. I bet if you freeze this, you're gonna find like a bunch of obscure characters that they're just putting in here as like Easter eggs. So I guess his version of Robin never became Nightwing. Yeah, that is terribly irresponsible. Turning a kid into a superhero. His daughter.
This is the Huntress.
Yep, Huntress. So the original version of the Huntress was his daughter in an alternate timeline. Him and Catwoman. I'm not a huge Huntress fan or a huge fan of like the Batman side characters. I mean, I kind of like Dick Grayson from the Teen Titans and pretty much Batman, and that's it. So I don't know the Huntress too well. I just remember that aspect of it. And also that I think they updated her origins when this was over so that somehow she fit into the regular timeline as like not his daughter from an alternate timeline. So part of what they're doing here is de-aging the main characters. So with these two Supermen in the comic, the older Superman was more like in his 50s, and the younger one was more like in his like early 30s. And this, it seems like early 20s and mid 30s. And also with Robin saying we're almost the same age, it looks like they're de-aging Batman as well. This is Dr. Light, I think, because this was one of the characters that they changed with this comic. I think this is not a character I'm familiar with, but I think from the comic, Dr. Light was a male character, and this miniseries turned Dr. Light into a female character. And I do know she was one of the primary characters because she's one of the more overpowered characters that helped in the fight scenes. So that's what I remember of Dr. Light. Otherwise, it's not a character I'm familiar with or that I'm that interested in. But I do know they changed the character in this series, and she was one of the main characters in this series. So we have the Monitor explaining what's going on with the Anti-Monitor and the Anti-Monitor wave destroying Earths. So this storyline was done to consolidate all of the characters and Earths and make it easier for readers. I think it was Marv Wolfman. I think it was his idea. Him and George Pérez did this comic. And the idea was to consolidate things to make it easier for new readers and maybe even for the writers to tell stories by consolidating everything to like one world, getting rid of some characters, streamlining continuity and storylines, having one version of these characters. And I think that part of the reason they're doing this is to de-age the characters, because that seems like one of the main things they're trying to do here. And also to streamline the animated films a little bit, because the animated films have bounced around a little bit. Also, the voice actors have changed. So I think introducing new voice actors for some of these characters is something that's going to be streamlined here. Because obviously, recently Kevin Conroy died, and he's not going to be doing the Batman voice anymore. So this is a way to not only introduce new voice actors, but also by saying it's a different version of the character, you don't get the fan backlash of, oh, this voice actor is replacing Kevin Conroy. No, this isn't the version of Batman you know from Kevin Conroy. So I think that's part of what they're doing as well as streamlining the different versions of the characters from the animated movies. What a meathead. That's funny. You can tell by the look on her face. She knows she's just going to her death. Oh, wow. They're actually doing it. They're making these sick, sadistic bastards likable. They're actually making me like these characters in that they're going out in a blaze of glory. I can't believe they did it. They're making me feel sorry for these characters. The only thing more hilarious than this would be if someone was in that car and she's throwing, and we see a car full of people and she's throwing at it. That would have been hilarious. That would have been priceless. That's wild. That's wild.
Entire realities have been erased from existence
So that's really inconsistent with how fast that
and dispersed.
graphic is going. Obviously, it's not moving that fast,
I've gathered
but
you
that's
all
crazy.
and hope that together we can
I like this. This is a good animated movie here, man. This is really good.
and save your
I
world.
can't believe they made me sympathize for the crime syndicate.
Why should we believe any of this? Kidnap us, show us a movie, and tell us we need to obey you in order to save the world. All of this is profoundly suspect.
That's funny.
He makes a good point. When told to give up our freedoms because we face an
He's the question because he never shuts up.
also
Destroyed.
That's a good question by Batman. Why Earth?
Falls. All
Because
follows. Such an
in this, in the comic books and the animated universe, there's life on other planets aside from Earth. Even with Mars, you have the Martian Manhunter.
It's all true.
So
Wonder Woman, hit me.
it makes sense for Batman to ask that because it's kind of like the writers talking to the audience, saying, hey, like we get certain parts doesn't make sense, so this is us explaining it to you. Again, obviously it's moving a lot slower than they're showing us there.
Who are we to fight?
That's funny. Speaking as a scientist, we're screwed.
No one to attack. This isn't that kind of fight. We can't punch our way out of this.
That's a great comeback line.
That right.
We can't punch our way out of this.
Michael Holgi.
Exoterran technology?
is some kind of solution
That wide shot definitely showed a bunch of characters that I'm not even aware of.
completely and utterly destroyed.
So this is interesting because when he recruits them, it's mainly for battle. And here we have Batman saying that we're going to use our genius level members to think of a way out of this. But I think the plan that they're going to think their way out of was already the Monitor's plan. Because I don't think he used them for planning, from what I remember. He already had his plan in place. But this is good because it makes the heroes more proactive and it de-emphasizes characters that are just here for this series. Pariah, Harbinger, the Monitor. Why have them do more when we're really here to see the heroes? Have the heroes do more of the stuff.
Come on, we can make it. Make the jump with me.
The heroes that we're familiar with. The Justice League. Because that's what this is. It's a Justice League movie. I mean, the comic book was called Crisis on Infinite Earths, and this animated film is called Justice League, Crisis on Infinite Earths. So it only makes more sense to emphasize the heroes more by making it seem like it's their ideas that are going to save the day as opposed to the Monitor's ideas. So here we have two timelines merging. The
Oh well. Breakfast time.
wedding
Charge out of this.
timeline with him and Iris, and the Amazo timeline as well. Kind of. Or no, maybe the wedding timeline is the one with the Monitor. Yeah. And this is just the Amazo timeline. Yeah, yeah. The Monitor timeline is the wedding timeline because that's after he left the wedding. The Crime Syndicate timeline, that's the one that's ending because that planet's being destroyed.
Before I'm too weak to do it.
And then this is the Amazo timeline. A Crisis on Infinite Earths. They used a name. A tuning fork tower. So here they're collectively coming up with the idea. But I think this was a pre-existing idea in the comic. We didn't see people think of it. We just saw it there. So it was the Monitor's quote unquote tuning fork. As far as what I remember, I could remember this all completely wrong because I was a kid when I read this. So it could be off, but that was what I remember of it. Yeah, so I think they were like shadow demons guarding these things or trying to destroy them or something. When the heroes went to different Earths and different periods of times on different Earths to protect them. There were shadow demons from the Anti-Monitor attacking them. I think you saw like World War II heroes, the Teen Titans, different characters like that. Caveman characters. It just introduced, again, different timelines and characters that they were trying to condense in the comic books at the time. So here I'm assuming he's moving in super speed. That's why it looks like everyone's standing still. So I wonder here, is he using his super speed to keep him and his wife alive
I've been meaning to ask you. When you
while,
party. Yes,
so it's him, Amazo, and his wife
she was a real firecracker.
are the only ones being kept alive with this speed
We
force,
had a good run.
when actually,
I was heartbroken.
as they're growing old and as time is passing,
Losing loved ones gives people something in common.
it's literally just like a short period of time, like maybe like days going by, but his speed force is slowing them down so much
Great Scott.
that they're able to grow old and he has time to try and save the Earth. It looks like that's what's happening. So is he not aware of the Anti-Monitor? I guess that could make sense because they haven't mentioned the Anti-Monitor yet.
Pray.
So is he living?
Hold them close.
So this is him in the same world where he's old too. It's the same Earth. It's a really good love story they got going here. You really feel for the characters. So I think that's what's happening here.
No, I won't let you go.
He's using his speed force here, and this Earth is the same Earth that he's old on with her. But his speed force slowed them down enough
Don't you get all sexist on me.
so that they could build this over decades.
Otherwise, we're never gonna finish.
Yes, boss.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. What I love about this movie is I think I have it figured out, but I could still be completely wrong.
You can't leave me.
It's such good storytelling. And it's such a complex story. I love the fact that they didn't dumb it down too much.
Besides, we've had.
They dumbed it down enough that I should be able to follow it, and I think I am, but they didn't dumb it down enough to make me feel like, you know, they're insulting my intelligence.
This is the big one.
Or that, like, I definitely know I know what's going on. Like, I feel some doubt.
Don't.
So this has to be like the main Earth, I think. Because, yeah, Batman and this Flash are on the same Earth, I would think. Even at this speed.
Will these
Yeah.
things work?
He's definitely using the Speed Force to keep them alive.
There's nothing.
That's crazy. So, I guess it's not a spoiler alert at this point, but Barry Allen does die in the comic. And it does come off as him being heroic. But what they did here is they made him seem even more heroic. Him, Iris, and Amazo. This is actually better execution than the comic. Because they really spend their time to make you care about Barry's sacrifice. I mean, you cared about Barry Allen dying in the comic as well, don't get me wrong, but this is really well done. Come on, Barry. Is that 3 Earths that are saved? It's definitely this one. Yeah, it looks like 3 Earths he saved. So I guess maybe it's possible he wasn't on the one with Batman. Maybe the one with Batman, Superman, and him were separate. But either way, Barry saved the day. Goddamn hero. Spectre. Spectre plays a huge part in this as well. Uh-oh. Amazo's not there. I never liked the design of the Spectre. Why does he have to be muscular, and why does he have to be in his underwear?
You bear some responsibility for all that has happened here.
His underwear and a cape with a hood and a mask. Why does he need a mask? Why does he need to be in his underwear? And why does he need muscles? Hate this design. I like the character, but I hate the design. So in the comic, when he does die, as he's running, he does see a lot of the heroes, I think particularly Batman, and he does warn them about what the next move they should do is. Yup. Before the beginning. That's the message. And this is a scene from Warworld. When I saw this scene, I didn't even know it was the Flash. And I didn't know what the hell it meant, because I didn't even know. How did I not know it was the Flash? He's literally wearing the Flash outfit. But I just saw like some old man.
It's you.
Yeah, this scene was in Warworld, and this is Batman, lost in time. And this is what the Flash was doing to Batman in the comic book as well. Warning him. I wonder if this is Barry's goodbye to us. Are we going to see him again after this scene? If not, this is a perfect way to wrap up his character and his character's sacrifice. I think that is Psycho Pirate. He plays a major role in things to come. There's a lot of false celebration in this comic book series. This is the first of them. Jesus, man. Change the past, change the future. This is an emotionally draining cartoon. That was well done. Well done. I really like that. Let me skip past some of this credits to see if there's a post-credit scene. No, it looks like it's going to wrap up without a post-credit scene, but man, I got my money's worth with that one. That was really, 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 really good. Well done, DC Animation. Well done. I can't wait for part 2.